Joining me now is Professor Christopher Isike from the University of Pretoria's Department of Political Sciences. Professor, very good afternoon. Talk to us about how significant the claim made by the U.S. ambassador regarding South Africa's alleged supply of ammunition to Russia and the war in Ukraine is, and what could the implications be on South Africa's international relations?
Yeah, good afternoon. Thank you for having me. This is a very serious allegation to make by the U.S. ambassador. You can already tell from the responses of the government of South Africa that it is an allegation they are not going to take lightly. It is interesting to know that they insist on the South African side that the relations between both countries are still in good condition. Look, if these allegations are proved to be correct, it can attract serious repercussions for South Africa in terms of the AGAWA that the ambassador mentioned in his press conference, as well as the PEPFAR and other aspects of U.S. investment in South Africa's economy, which can have dire consequences for the overall economy of the country. So this is not a light matter. I'm sure that it is something that will be treated with the seriousness that it deserves on the part of the South African government.
Professor Isike, let's break this down. So firstly, Ambassador Brigety makes an allegation of enormous proportions. So that's the one aspect to the conversation. The response by South Africa is not one of denial, but one of we will investigate and establish what transpired. Surely the expectation would be, no, this did not happen on my watch, the president would say, but this was not to be.
Well, you are right in terms of especially how the president sought to respond to the question by the DA in Parliament yesterday on this. If there was no such thing, the president would have probably been much more stronger in answering the question and in refuting it. But we have since then heard from the minister in the presidency clarifying that there was South Africa took delivery of some weapons in that shape in December. And so we are going to probably get instrumental insight into what actually transpired. But one would have expected, because this is not really new. I think there's been talk about this since December. The U.S. have been engaging with the South African government on this, and it was on the table when the South African delegation, the South African envoy, went to the U.S. to discuss issues around its relations with Russia, AGOA, and other related issues. This was part of the issues that were discussed. So clearly, the South African government did not give a satisfactory answer, and they have not so far given a satisfactory answer even to its own parliament. And that's where the problem is, and that's where there's room for doubt about what actually transpired.
So a DIRCA spokesperson said that relations are in order, relations are fine, but there are a couple of telltale signs. Now, DIRCA Minister Naledi Pandor a few months ago spoke out against the Americans and said that South Africa is a sovereign state and, a paraphrase, reserves a right to neutrality where the Russia-Ukraine war is concerned. Now, come back to Ambassador Brigety, and he's raised the issue of AGOA, the issue of PEPFAR, and the amount of support that the United States is giving to South Africa. Would he have raised these issues if a ball was not already in motion in this is how it's likely to play out?
Yeah, you're correct again. My first thought when I listened to his interview yesterday was that I think they are laying the ground for the eventual punitive measures against South Africa. And coming to the public to do a press conference, which is sometimes outside, normal diplomatic channels of engagement with on this kind of issues, is a pointer to the fact that they are trying to prepare the South African public and win some kind of public opinion in their favor to already explain beforehand why they are going to take the action that they will take. So I think that this is part of a tactic to prepare for the eventual punitive action against South Africa, either in the form of not removing South Africa from the list of the AGOA beneficiaries, the PEPFAR, funding, as well as, probably even depending on how far they want to go, looking at other areas of investment in the South African economy.
Now, we've been reporting that DIRCO Minister Naledi Pandor will be in conversation with Antony Blinken of the United States this afternoon, obviously in conversation around this issue. What is the likely things that Naledi Pandor is going to say to Antony Blinken in your mind?
Well, I think, look, there is nothing new she's going to say that has not been said in the last couple of months, and especially in the last visit of the South African envoy to the U.S. to try and explain South Africa's position on these issues. But what may be new would be, and I've seen the South African government push this since yesterday and maybe this morning, is the issue of the ambassador having to go out, to the public to do a press conference rather than engage on the issues some more. I think that is something that they are going to have to look at with the possibility of exploring options that South Africa may have to also sanction the ambassador, because that press conference had consequence for South Africa, not only in terms of the RAND, but in terms of how South Africa is viewed all over the world. And there's going to be talk about the correctness of the action of the ambassador in this regard.
Now, what we might want to do is theoretically put the two countries on a scale, the United States of America and Russia, and what we stand to lose. Now, when we look at trade between the two countries, Russia does not appear on the scale, if you will. It is heavily in the favor of the United States of America. This is outside of AGOA, outside of PEPFAR. Does this suggest that South Africa is making a mistake in as far as its stance on Russia is concerned?
Yes, I think it is something to agree on, because South Africa probably has not correctly done a cost-benefit analysis of its stance on Russia. And by the way, when we talk about Russia, and I think that South Africa is trying to clarify that today now, South Africa's friendship ties and relationship with Russia is not divorced cannot be divorced from its connections with Ukraine, because the minister in his presidency did clarify today that their relationship is with the USSR, which Ukraine is part of, and that is why they saw themselves as conduits for possible peaceful negotiation of the conflict. And if that is the case, then South Africa would have done well to ensure, that it actually practice non-alignment, not active non-alignment, a passive kind of non-alignment that would have enabled it to be more neutral and enabled it to play a better role in terms of facilitating an end to the conflict, because its allegiance should not only be to Russia right now, it should also be to Ukraine, considering the military ties between South Africa and Russia and Ukraine, especially during the apartheid years. Most of the training, as you know, of the ANC cadre was done in Ukraine, in Odessa. So these are issues that should be frontline in that relationship. So those are the things that should have actually driven South Africa to take a neutral stance, even for the sake of it, excluding the United States. Now, if you put the two side by side, like you said, you'll find that there is no realist factor that would drive South Africa to even begin to tinker with its relationship with the United States. So one would have thought that they would have played it the way India has played non-alignment, looking at their economic interests and using that as a basis for neutrality to the Russians, and then using its relationship with Ukraine, a historical relationship with Ukraine and Russia, to say, look, how about we come in here as mediators, and also using the BRICS channels. And I think that BRIC connection is one of the reasons why the U.S. president is a bit circumspect about the role that South Africa is playing, because they believe that South Africa does have the plausibility of South Africa, being part of the solution is also high. So the U.S. is going to take all of this into consideration when they decide what they want to do and how they want to do it.
Professor, appreciate your time this afternoon. Professor Christopher Isike from the University of Pretoria's Department of Political Sciences.